A to the K.
To the K.
To the K.
Hello and welcome to the A2theK Wrestling Show, where Anthony is already yawning. And what is
Damn it.
Hell in a Cell? We caught you.
I didn't think you caught it.
Oh, we caught you. But yeah, we're here to give our thoughts, obviously, on
That was
Hell
my
in a Cell.
thoughts. I'm done. Oh,
Yeah, and that was the show. So we made record timing, and we'll see you next time.
Not like us at all.
That's not like us. But unfortunately, that is going to be the case for this one. I imagine it'll be short and sweet. We say this, but we do end up going off on tangents. But ultimately,
I've got at least one tangent in this fucking shit shutdown. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
We'll see. But yeah, I think, to kick things off before we even go into the matches, all I wanted to say was wholly predictable Batman. Because, first thing, I got 7 out of 7 on the prediction series. I know you didn't, Anthony, but for me and for a vast majority of us, it was a very predictable show.
I should have got 7.
You got 2 of them wrong, I think. You got 5. But for me, this was the most predictable show I'd ever seen. I couldn't see any of these matches going any other way. And I think even with the little sprinkle of surprise that we had with, obviously, is Cody going to make it? He's injured. What? Even that didn't end up being a surprise, really, because obviously, and spoilers ahead, but obviously you wouldn't have, Cody lose to Seth, because, yeah. So, I don't know, I think in my mind everything was kind of a bit of a foregone conclusion before I actually sat down to watch this. So I think that took away from the show, pretty massively, unfortunately. But without my really somber intro, should we go on to the very first match, Anthony, which was...
Everything's awful. Let's talk about it.
Everything is awful. Okay, so the first one, do you want to talk about the match that kicked off the show?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think it was the right choice to have this kick off the show. To be honest, I'll say the right choice. It was the right choice to have this either kick off the show or close the fucking show, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm all for the women's evolution, so it's not a gender thing when I say this, but I think it was probably the right call, given the anticipation around the Cody stuff, to have this open the show. So it could have been main event caliber. It was a really good match, but I think the right call was to open the show with it, to start off on a high. And this is what this is. As much as is a very predictable Hell in a Cell, we all knew Bianca was coming out the winner in this. The women's title match between Becky, Bianca, and Asuka was a banger of a match.
Yeah,
it's surprising where they've gone since with Becky and stuff, but overall this was a really solid match. I said the only unfortunate thing for me is there was no element of this that made me think Bianca may not come out of this the champion. So you kind of knew going in what was going to happen, but it doesn't take away from the fact that the athleticism here and the talent here was on point.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to kind of feel for them a little bit, because by all accounts they were going to set up Naomi and Bianca, weren't they, until tag team title gate happened. So they have had to kind of just scramble almost to get something together that made a semblance of sense for the show. But that being said, I think it's a really interesting point you made. Any other time, this should have closed the show, because it was for a title. Yeah. Cody and Seth wasn't. The fucking Roman's nowhere to be seen, so we haven't got any other fucking major titles being defended, let's be honest. So you think, why didn't this close the show? And it's simply because it wasn't a Hell in a Cell match. Which then leads you to the other fucking point of why have a pay-per-view called Hell in a Cell, where the fucking Hell in a Cell is already there, and you have one match used to sell.
Yeah.
Come on.
This is where the name of the pay-per-view kind of pisses me off. But
yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I think what's wrong with having multiple Hell in a Cell matches? You don't just have to have one be the only attraction. This could have potentially benefited as well from Hell in a Cell if it was built in the right way. But regardless, I think you're right. The match quality was really good, but unfortunately, I don't think it was ever in question. And I think it was a nice little snippet, the fact that Bianca won it using Becky Lynch tactics, essentially, because Becky had it won, and obviously Bianca comes in and dumps her out and takes the pin, something Becky has done and would do. So that was kind of nice, kind of furthers their little rivalry they've got going on. But
I like that, yeah.
Poor Asuka to a degree as well, because they brought her back.
And I've been waiting for it to come back for ages, and it's now it's to a losing effort.
Yeah, and now it's she was in the title scene for a hot minute, and now she'll be gone again. So, yeah. But no, solid match. I also think it's interesting, because I get it for WrestleMania, but since when did we have to start opening every single pay-per-view with one of the fucking top 2 matches?
fair point.
Because for me, it's nice to build up something like I think back to like you. I don't even think back. I think currently to UFC cards. Like fair dues, you might have a really good match on the pre-show to encourage people to buy the fucking thing, right? So that could make sense. But you don't start a UFC card with one of the title fights. You just don't do it. You build up to the main events.
It does feel a bit odd, especially because the main event of this particular pay-per-view wasn't even a title match.
Exactly.
So it just seems a bit odd that the title match opened the show. But this is where, again, I suppose it's because of the storytelling, isn't it? Like, UFC do it because it's not about story. It's like, it's not scripted, so there's no element of, like, that kind of structure. But in this, like, the crowd would have been dead for these guys if they were main events, sadly. Because they've already been through all the anticipation with the Cody stuff and stuff like that.
Do you know what, though? I don't think they would. Because, for me, I think the crowd is dead. Because this is one of the only 2 good matches on the show. And you start off with it, and then you've got to put up with 5 other ones of shite, where the crowd's dead until they're waiting for the main event. So I feel like if you have this slow build of like, well, no, I don't really care about this. Okay, yeah, I care a bit more. You start to build that over time in terms of like, okay, I'm fucking ready now. But yeah, I don't know.
It should rise. It should all rise, shouldn't it? But maybe if they did like a banger of a match to open, and then one in the middle, and then one at the very end, and then all the filler in between the 3, that might have. But there was nothing in the middle. I don't care what anyone says. Judgement Day versus BuLiv Club wasn't like particularly fantastic. It was good.
It was 8. Yeah. But yeah, so probably maybe match of the night. Maybe.
Personally, like that would be very debatable to our listeners and to a lot of people. But personally, I think this probably was the match of the night.
I mean, we'll get onto it. People think the Cody and Seth match was fucking one of the best matches ever, and
I'm salty as fuck about that, so I will talk about that.
We'll get onto that. So kicked off with the women's match. Obviously, Bianca retains. The next match we had was Bobby Lashley taking on the team of Omos and MVP. Because of course, I really don't have anything to say about this, which speaks volumes in itself. But
one thing I would say is, how come we can't ever have a match that involves Bobby Lashley that the barricade can stay intact?
Do you know what? You've taken my only fucking speaking point, right?
I'm sorry.
Sorry. No, it's fine because it's such a valid point, right? Why is it every single fucking time now we have to have a barricade spot? It's so fucking pointless, isn't it? It's so overdone to the point where it's meaningless. And Omos looked like shit going through it. Like, you can say what you want about Goldberg, and we do say what we want about Goldberg, but at least he can make it look half decent, spearing someone through a barricade. Omos looked fucking awful.
Do you know what Omos is? Omos is your Satnam Singh of WWE.
Yeah, to a degree.
He's tall and he can't wrestle.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
No, you're right. I think
trying to make it a thing. It's never going to be a thing.
I had some very reserved, moderately, medium hopes for Omos when they teamed him with MVP. Now, don't get me wrong, I immediately knew this was, fucking end of days for Bobby because he's not a face. But I thought, well, maybe, pairing Omos with MVP could bring a side out of him personality-wise that, he hasn't seen before. But no, he hasn't got a personality. He is literally... He's tall. That's him. In a nutshell. If you had like a dating profile, tall.
If you wanted a tall guy with not much personality, like, haven't they already had Shaquille O'Neal in WWE before now?
Well, exactly. I mean, the thing is,
that's
even
right.
Shaquille O'Neal put a better match on in AEW than Omos has ever put on in WWE. So, speak of that when you will.
It just baffles me. Like, they've teamed him with MVP, they've teamed him with AJ Styles. But the fact is, he literally, like, it's not even like he's trying and he's not hitting the mark. I just don't feel like he's actually doing anything.
He's just not a wrestler. Unfortunately, with WWE's hiring criteria at the minute, they will find people who are pro athletes or, are some freaks in some way. And no offense to the guy, but he's freakishly tall. Yeah. So that ticks a box. But he's got no personality and he's got no desire to be a wrestler. So, what do you do?
Indeed. So yeah, I think that it was a bit of a damp squib, this whole thing, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, Bobby probably deserves a bit of a solid to get him over because, he was the champion and they've done nothing with him since and he was injured and stuff, but it's like, it doesn't really do anything for Omos, the fact that him and MVP together as a team got beat by one person. So
yeah. But I mean, I have seen some people making the shout that he needs to go back to the main title scene now. Bobby proved his point. Kicked some ass.
Well, do you know what was funny? And obviously, spoilers if you haven't seen This Week in Wrestling. Is after the match, he stole one of the fans' things, fucking titles, and basically was there saying, you know, oh, I'm coming back for this kind of thing, and yeah,
That kid's terrified.
He then goes to Raw and challenges for the US title. So, okay.
So he just meant in general.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. So, Carl, the next one I'm going to put in the category of, better than it should have been. And that's always the case. Kevin Owens has turned this into fucking gold, really. And Kevin Owens versus Ezekiel had no right to be as good as it was. And that is me giving it a compliment. The storyline is just daft as fuck. But Kevin Owens, the master of selling a fucking storyline, I thought made this a fantastic match. And naturally, I have not actually seen a lot of Elias in the ring. And I still haven't, because this isn't Elias. But obviously we know Kevin Owens is fantastic in the ring. But I think the pair of them put on a really good match. And for as ridiculous as the storyline is, I really enjoyed it. That's all I've got to say. It's your turn now.
Yeah. I don't know. Match wise, it was fine. Kevin Owens is really good. Elias has been doing well with what he has, but I just think unfortunately the whole thing's gone on a bit too long. And
let's face it though, like if they put a line under it now, you can be happy with that, can't you?
I could, maybe, except that they haven't. They're still going
I know.
on.
My point is, I don't think if we're being objective and we haven't already seen Raw, which we have, and you go, Hell in a Cell was a good place to end it. That would have been a good place to end it. I don't think it was overdone at this point. I think it's getting overdone now.
Yeah. I mean, yes and no, to be fair, because even if this match would have happened, it couldn't have ended it because we still haven't got him to admit that he was Elias or whatever, whereas on Raw this past week, he got him to admit that he was Elias for a rematch, and then was like, all you said was I had to say I was Elias, and I'd get a rematch. I'm not Elias. I lied to you. I used you. You played you at your own game. And it was like, good one. Cool. So yeah, I don't know. It's just a massive fall from grace for Kevin Owens going from Austin to this, and I'm a big fan of Elias. I'm somewhat of a fan of Ezekiel, but yeah.
Zeke, as we call him. I don't know. I'm not like again. I think we're going into the realms of too far now. And to be honest, I don't know a scenario like is the end result of this going to be him admitting to Elias?
Who knows?
Like I don't know what the end goal is. Like
they probably haven't got an end goal
because surely they want to keep to the gimmick and the name. So I don't know. I don't know, man.
I don't know, indeed.
Look at some of the fun they've had with it over the months, like the blatantly bad photoshops and all sorts. It's just been great fun.
Well, I mean, it's definitely added a comedy element, but I think that's the problem. There's no kind of end goal in sight with it. It's like, what is the payoff?
No end goal.
So, yeah, we'll see. But I think this and the last one, which is the Omos one, I think, going from memory, were the two that you got incorrect in terms of the outcome. I think you thought maybe that Omos and MVP would be too much for Bobby, and I think also.
To be fair, I remember picking Omos because I actually thought the point of the whole thing was to put Omos over, which clearly went.
Yeah, you would assume, but again, a lot of people. I think it was actually the most popular pick for people thinking Ezekiel would go over for Kevin Owens, but I just felt like, I felt like it wouldn't be the case because you couldn't have Owens lose to Ezekiel after having a match with Austin at Mania. So, but yeah, remains to be seen where it goes. But it seems like it's not over yet, which you may be happy with, you may not, but it's where we are.
That's where we are.
Speaking of, where we are. Now, this almost feels a little bit redundant because we know what happens off the back of it, but at the pay-per-view, we had Judgement Day taking on the BuLiv Club, as I'm affectionately naming it, because, AJ and Finn were both in the Bullet Club and Liv's there, so it makes sense.
Sadly, it was a good name, but we'll never get to use it now.
We won't, because Yeah, so essentially you have this match that gets put together. I was critical of it anyway because I'm not heightist. Obviously, I'm a short guy, but you stack these up and it's like you've got Damien and AJ, which I
Yeah,
mean,
like
okay.
Giants versus not Giants in it really.
You've got Edge and Balor, same. You've got Rhea Ripley and Liv, same. So it was almost like very much an underdog story. But they just built up Judgment Day as a faction, and I think it was it's very clear that they weren't going to bury them.
Yeah. Again, what a further thing to why this is a predictable pay-per-view.
Yeah. However, what wasn't predictable was obviously what happened the following night on Raw. So, was it the following night? It was. Yes. So obviously, as we know, spoilers ahead. But the new member of the Judgment Day was Finn Balor, who obviously was in the losing effort against Judgment Day, except the usurp Edge and kick him out the Judgment Day group.
Yeah. Because who better than Edge? How about the guy that we just beat up the night before?
Finger McPew Pew. That's who I want lead in my stable. So, yeah. So this whole match was effectively redundant because they all fought and then, Finn swapped sides and they kicked Edge out. And AJ and Liv were nowhere to be seen. So.
I think Judgment Day are going to go the way of Retribution now.
Really?
It's going to be chaotic changes in leadership, things just getting pulled apart. I don't think it's going to last now, sadly.
Well, rumour has it they are looking at introducing some kind of supernatural elements to this faction, obviously with Undertaker gone. They still want to retain some elements of that, so...
Is the Damien side going to come out again?
Maybe. The Demon and...
The Demon and the Damien.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
It was a match and it happened.
Indeed. Speaking of matches that happened, I don't have a lot to say about this next one, Carl. All I'm going to say is the right decision was made, and I'm talking about Madcap Moss versus Happy Corbin. Madcap Moss took the win as the right decision. The culmination of this storyline, whether you followed it or not, should have been Madcap Moss taking the win. That's exactly what they did. Not a big deal as far as matches go and storylines go, so I don't have a lot to say on it other than I think it was the right decision at least.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, Madcap Moss is obviously, what's it called? Shedded his gimmick, if you will. But he's still going by the name of Madcap Moss, so that probably isn't the best idea. But his little shitty suspenders are gone. Looks like a normal wrestler now. He's got a good look about him as well, but he just doesn't seem to have that. I don't know, the charisma, the overness with the fans.
That's the problem. He's good, but yeah, there's just not enough about him, is there really?
No, and obviously it was a no holds barred match, and ultimately ended with the tried and true fucking chair on the neck, and basically breaking his windpipe or whatever. So what's next for Happy Corbin? Is he going to take a break now? Is he going to come back as a different gimmick again? Who knows?
Maybe. He's been a baron. He's been a king. He's been happy. He's been sad.
Yeah.
What next? What next for Corbin?
Who knows? But yeah, so it's definitely an interesting one. Where does Madcap go from here now, especially without Corbin as his foil? So it'll be interesting to see whether he can capitalise on the bit of momentum he's built up. And as I said, it'll be interesting to see if Happy Corbin comes back with a different gimmick again. But yeah, match-wise, it was the right choice. Obviously, Madcap was taken out, got his revenge, and even though he's a babyface, did a very heelish move by breaking his windpipe, essentially. So, nice.
Nice.
So, the penultimate match, is that the right word to use?
Yes.
Is that what that means? So, the match before the main event was the United States Championship on the line. Theory taking on Mustafa Ali. And again, no surprises here. Now, the the premium live event took place in Chicago, which is Mustafa Ali's hometown. So he was the hometown hero. He sported the Chicago stars on his tights and all that.
But they were like, you know what, fuck that guy.
But basically, that didn't matter. And even though it was a solid match, the most interesting thing about it was the heel won clean. So Mustafa Ali just got beat. There was no shenanigans. He didn't have to cheat to win. In his hometown, Theory just basically beat Ali. So, if it's to be believed, John Cena has reportedly said he would like to work with Theory, which I think would be fucking brilliant, to be fair. Big fan of Theory. I do think he could be a world champion if he gets the right exposure.
I think the only thing that worries me about Theory at the minute is, like, and this is no disrespect to Ali, but they're very up and down on his opponents, and it's like people aren't tuning in for Theory versus Ali, so it's like he needs a match, like you say, like Cena would be perfect. That'd be a good thing to get him over, but like right now, it's like we need some different booking going on.
No, definitely. He's got all the potential in the world to be a breakout star, but they just need to just refine what they're doing with him, because at the minute he's like getting involved in stuff, but then other people come out and help him, but then they're not affiliated with him because he's technically on his own. He's meant to be Vince's protege, but now he doesn't have anything to do with Vince anymore. So like, what is he?
What is he?
Yeah. Here's my theory. And yours. No, so ultimately, right decision. I think Theory is a good champion. He has got all the potential in the world, and I think he will be a big star. So keeping him with a long run of the belt is probably the right thing to do. But yeah, it seems like maybe Bobby Lashley is next for him, so that could be interesting. If he manages to beat Bobby, then fair play. They're pushing him, but yeah, remains to be seen.
Indeed, can he beat Bobby?
Can he beat Bobby?
So, Carl, let's talk about the main event. Right. This is going to be polarizing. I already know the internet is against me on this, but I'm going to say me fucking piece, right? For starters, this match as a whole was a very good match. I am not insulting the match. It was enjoyable. The pair of them worked fantastically together. It was a good match, right? However, I'm fucking sick of seeing, oh, Cody's like, he's at legend level because of this, etc. And people be, oh, he's a tough son of a bitch. Like, this is not, and I've said this to Carl before, so Carl's gonna like, shut up, but this is not one of those moments. This isn't like, oh, Austin's broke his freaking neck and still, finished the match, or anything along that line. This is a guy who was injured and shouldn't have participated in the match, but did it anyway. This isn't, he got it, like, if he tore his pec during the match and carried on, I would be with everyone. I'd go, he's a tough son of a bitch, carrying on like that for the sake of the fans. This is a man who made a choice that he shouldn't have made. Bottom line, he shouldn't have. Like, people are going, oh, you wouldn't have injured it anymore, so he was fine to do the match. Bullshit. You've torn a pectoral, for fuck's sake. There's always risks that could happen, and the risks, to be honest, for me, were more on Seth's side. Mm-hmm. Seth had to carry the man through the match, and Cody may have fucked it up in some way. Yeah. Luckily, nothing like that happened. But why take the risk, however remote, when you already knew you were injured? Now, I did voice that on, I think it was our news one, as to why he may have took that risk, given how briefly he's been back in WWE. He wanted to make a point, maybe. But I can't fathom why people are like, oh yeah, commend him so much for wrestling with an injury. It's like, why? That's stupid. Like, it's not, again, because people have compared this to, like, well, this is no different to Matt Hardy getting concussed. It's like, it is, because he didn't get a concussion the night before and still come up and have a fucking match. It's not the same thing. Do you know what is wildly hilarious about that, though? Is people were furious that Matt Hardy continued the match after he sustained the concussion during the match. Yeah. And yet them same people are commending Cody, who had significantly, amount of time to pull out the match and to change it and do whatever, for going through with the match that, as you said, it wasn't so much about, because people are saying, well, once you tear your pec, there's not really much else damage you can do, so it's fine. Well, no, it's not about Cody at that point, because his, selfishness of, wanting to be in the match, if, they would have done a spot and just something would have gone wrong and he needed to save Seth and he couldn't, he could have, ridiculously severe, effects on his opponent. So for me, it was misguided, and I don't think it should be celebrated. I think there's plenty of time to pull him out. Yeah. Shocking that it was cleared. But what annoys me as well, especially, is that people are commending Cody. Yeah. For turning up and doing a match with like half an arm, right? Why aren't we commending Seth for carrying that fucking match? I know. Because he fucking had to. And obviously the Cody Love Fest, he comes out on Raw the next night, doesn't he? And he's like, nobody forced me to go through with that match. I did it because it's what I love to do. And it's like, what you love to do, dickhead? Like, loves to be the fucking martyr. Yeah, basically. But, yeah, and again, I'm not knocking the match. So it was a good match, despite itself. But I just can't believe it. Oh, look how bruised his shoulder was. He is a legend now. Like, bullshit.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
That's it. People are like, this is one of them iconic matches that we'll look back on in 20 years, and it's like, really? Really? I don't get it. And if anything, it buried Seth, because this is the third attempt he's had at Cody now, and this time literally had a fucking arm behind his back. You know what I mean? And he's still lost.
Yeah, I could beat Seth with one arm. He fucking did, didn't he?
Yeah, and it's like, holy shit balls. Like, I get it, you can't derail Cody's momentum, but they don't think about how it then impacts Seth, and people are like, oh, he's so good, he'll bounce back. And it's like, well, while that might be true, he still lost a match to a guy with one arm.
Yeah. It's madness, isn't it? I don't like the idea that this perpetuates that. Like, are we going to now encourage wrestlers to wrestle injured? Is that going to be a new thing? You proved you're tough if you wrestle with an injury, because surely that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Again, I totally understand if you sustain an injury during a match, right? You carry on. That's some tough shit. And like, I will always commend things like Austin is always me go-to. Fair enough. Shouldn't have fucking carried on, but insane, and finished the match for the sake of like the fact they were in it and they wanted to end it for the crowd. Fair enough. Mick Foley may have been a work, but getting held off the top of a cage and finishing the match, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But I just don't understand. Like, what are we gonna get now? We're gonna get just people just rocking back up now. It's like, yeah, I know my knees in fucking tatters, but Cody did it.
I mean, you've also got to ask yourself whether this now, sets a new fucking benchmark almost for people who feel, if they've got a knock or wherever they're carrying a bit of an issue, they'll be like, well, Cody did it. Exactly. And so it's gonna set a precedent of basically people having to work injured, because now you can say, well, Cody did it.
And by the way, I'm not being anti-WWE. Like, we never got any actual confirmation, but when people were saying that Kenny Omega was wrestling injured, that was stupid as well. Yeah, but no one ever out and out proved that. He had to go away to heal up, which is where he currently is. But it was always a speculation that he was wrestling injured. If he was injured, he fucking shouldn't have.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair to Kenny as well, is you could never tell he was injured, so clearly it wasn't a debilitating injury, whereas Cody literally couldn't use his fucking arm.
Yeah.
Couldn't use the fucking, his right hand side. So he's therefore working a full match with his less dominant fucking arm. I don't know. But look, at the end of the day, the match happens, so you can't rest too much on the fact that it maybe shouldn't have. It did go ahead. They did well with the time they had and the circumstances they were in. It shouldn't have happened,
and it was a really good match.
It did. And yeah, it was for what it was. It was well booked. And it was well paced, and it did what it needed to do. But ultimately, and maybe it's what's the right word? It basically treats the audience like fucking idiots, because we're all just sat here meant to just believe that Cody can't use his fucking arm, and he's still easily, well, not easily, but still manages to get a win over Seth. Like, if anything, it should have been Seth fucking obliterated him in that match, and it was like Seth goes away the biggest fucking heel, Cody goes away the biggest babyface, because he tried to get through the match, but Seth.
See, wouldn't that I know you couldn't have literally done it, but if they made it look like Seth was targeting that blatant injury and won, because even if they added some Cody passed out from the pain or some shit, they could have still sold this as Seth being an absolute monster heel, and like you say, Cody getting the babyface push. But the way they did it is now you kind of see through the the story, don't you? And you go, well, Seth's obviously protecting Cody.
Yeah.
He's not trying to hurt him, and that's obvious. And sadly, you have to make it obvious because he does need to protect him. But it kind of ruins the story and the heel gimmick, doesn't it?
Yeah, and Seth literally went out the very next night on Raw and did exactly what he should have done at the pay-per-view. It's there was literally no benefit of Cody taking the win here, because he's gone away for a bit.
It's like Seth, he's got a literal fucking target on his shoulder.
I know.
Hit there.
The bookers and the agents are there going, well, no, on this sheet of paper it says Cody wins, so that's what we're doing. It's like, no, remove yourself from the fucking, what's booked, and actually think about it.
Yeah, look at the situation.
They could have done something more meaningful, I think. But Cody gets all the plaudits because he wrestled a match that he shouldn't have, because he was injured, and isn't he such a a fucking hard ass, and well done.
And look, I don't mean to brag, and I'm not saying it's on the same level. I'm not saying that, Carl. But I'm gonna go to work tomorrow, and I've got a cold.
Fucking hell, man.
I'm just saying, like it's.
I'm gonna look back on this in 20 years' time, because I'm assuming it's man flu as well.
Of course, yeah, the strongest strain. Yeah.
Think about what you're. But no, it's exactly that, isn't it? At the end of the day, and I don't want to shit on him. At the end of the day, he probably didn't want to let the fans down. It's a shitty circumstance for Cody. Just come back, all this hype, getting pushed to the moon, and now he's going to be on the shelf for 6 months.
I don't know how the conversation's gone backstage, and we never will. And I mentioned it in the news, but I'll mention it here for those who are only listening to this and want to call me a knobhead. I totally get why Cody, not you, I totally get why Cody would have pushed himself to do the match, because, like you say, he's been there for a couple of months, and now he's going to have to go away and heal up, so he wants to make a point before he goes. I totally get that. But who signed off on him doing it? Who cleared him? Like, surely they would have gone, look, don't worry about it. We totally commend you wanting to do the match, but maybe not. Madness.
I mean, supposedly WWE's medical team are so astute that any even remote chance of aggravating anything, then it's a no-go. But no, you can just go out, mate.
He's come out, like, you can clearly see the injury on his shoulder, and his medical team are there, like, yeah, it looks fine to me. And you go, right, so I'm starting to believe CM Punk that he probably did have a staph infection like most of his career, and you didn't do that about it.
Yeah, if it's convenient for the storyline and for the show, then yeah, you can wrestle injured. But if you're not that important, then yeah, it's fine. You take your time off. What I did think was hilarious is people thinking this is a work, saying, "Look, you can see the makeup," and it's like
that's blood.
Like, come on, like it's so funny to see people like.
I want to know in what world they've got makeup that does not come off at all in a physical match like that.
I know.
I'm like, that's some impressive shit right there.
Exactly, but
like, think about it, right? If that doesn't come off when you're sweating and being thrown around the ring, how the fuck is it ever going to come off? You're going to have to bath in?
Yes. No, it's a sad state of affairs when people are looking at stuff, because it's mad. You've got no middle. It's very rare you've got a rational middle ground, isn't it? You've got one edge of the fan base going, "Cody's the fucking man. He went through this with no arm. Oh my god, he's a legend." And you've got the other guys going, "It's totally fake. You can totally see it's makeup. God." And it's like there's no
marks.
Yeah, and it's like there's no fucking middle ground, is there? But I guess I don't know where. Yeah, I don't know what ground we stand on, but ultimately I think we both agree the match shouldn't have gone ahead for the safety of both of them involved. It did go ahead. They made pretty good of what they had to work with, which wasn't much. Was it a legendary match that goes down? I don't believe so, personally. But
personally, I agree. I don't think it is. People might always go, "Do you remember that time Cody wrestled injured?" But I don't think it'll ever be up there with like the other legendary matches and moments. To be fair,
indeed.
If I'm being honest, I don't even think it's the best Cody Seth match.
Well, we've had a fucking enough of them since he's been back. So
we've got a few to choose from. I don't think this was particularly the best one between the two of them.
No, but because he wrestled with one arm, then that's apparently makes it worthwhile.
Next time, I'm one leg.
Zach Gowan has entered the chat. But yeah, that was Hell in a Cell. A very predictable and very meh premium live event on the whole. But at least we've managed to progress some of the stories on a little bit. So we know what's happened with Judgment Day now. We know Bobby Lashley's on to new things. Interestingly, there was only one SmackDown match on the whole show. So that probably tells you enough about the state that SmackDown's in.
The best show, SmackDown, the best one.
And the only match they could pull from it was fucking Madcap Moss and Happy Corbin, for Christ's sake. But anyway, that was Hell in a Cell. My voice is going. Anthony's got man flu, and so we've come to an end.
Go down in as legends. Clearly.
Yeah. You better remember this. You better look back at this episode. After the massive hiatus, we come back. We forced our way through, even though we both,
Do you know what? That's what sets Cody apart from us. Like he wouldn't have had a hiatus.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're back and better than ever, if you will. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed the segments this week. We've had This Week in Wrestling, we've had Ringside Report, and obviously our Hell in a Cell review as well. So yeah, make sure you listen to us. If you're watching this now, check us out on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, whatever the fuck it is. Apple Music? I don't know. I'm an
Apple
Android
Music,
guy.
I think. Now.
Yeah, everywhere. Amazon, Google, Stitcher, everywhere. Anything that exists, we're on
Everywhere
there.
on iHeartRadio, because iHeartRadio.
Of course we are, because we heart radio. And if you are listening to this now, check our beautiful faces out on YouTube as well for all the inside jokes of me pointing at things and, rolling my eyes and all that good stuff. But until next time, we are A2theK. We are back. We are better than ever. And here is the lovely Georgia Smith to say bye.
Hey guys, it's Georgia Smith here, and you've heard me on A2theK. These guys are awesome. Check it out. A2theK.
A2theK.